What is up, guys? In this video, I'm going to be building an awesome 1440p gaming PC build for 2022 and 2023 at this point, featuring the legendary RTX 3070 GPU. I'll be running you through all the parts that make this build possible, putting the thing together as we go, and looking at those all-important performance benchmarks later. We're talking COD Warzone 2, Modern Warfare 2, Apex, Fortnite, and many more. Let's do this. Let me kick things off by looking at the CPU first of all, and this is the AMD Ryzen 5 7600X. It's a very fast CPU in terms of both single and multi-threaded performance, retaining the 6 cores and 12 threads from the last generation. It provides a massive increase over the Ryzen 5 5600X at the same price for the CPU only, and although it runs quite a bit hotter than the last generation, AMD claim this is by design to get the most clock speed out of the CPU. There are of course arguments to be made for Intel's i5-13600K, something I'll leave our recent web article to cover off for you. It's definitely worth a read if you want to build a system like this. Memory and RAM wise, I've got a 32GB kit of Corsair's Vengeance RGB DDR5. Initially, when DDR5 kits first landed, they were very pricey, but I've noticed, especially in the last few weeks or months since the Ryzen launch, that prices, they have definitely been getting cheaper. You could get away with a 16GB kit for this build, but I'd recommend 32GB. For me, it's just going to be way better suited. Storage is provided by the Samsung SSD 980. This is their Gen 3, not their Gen 4 option, saving us a bit of cash. While this build is hardly the most budget-oriented system ever, I also don't want to build something ludicrously expensive, so a cheaper $70 or so SSD like this will do the job perfectly. Now for the motherboard, you've got a few choices when it comes to the brand new Ryzen architecture, and those choices have become a little bit more clear actually since it launched. Chipset-wise, you've got two, but sort of four. You've got X670 and B650, and then E or Extreme versions of both. Now, spoiler alert, the Extreme versions only include PCIe Gen 5 PCIe slots, which no modern graphics card uses. Not AMD's new options, not Nvidia's new 4080 or 4090, meaning a non-E version, like this tough B650M Plus, is a great choice. Now, I've got to give a shout out to ASUS actually. I told them I was making this video, and they were like, well, haven't we just got some motherboards for you? So they sent me out a few options, so I could sort of compare and contrast and pick which I thought was the best for a build like this. From their STRIX board, which is obviously going to be more pricey, in a white aesthetic with the non-extreme chipset, to something like this, which is their B650E, that's extreme, full-size ATX ROG STRIX design. Now, initially, when I looked at this board, I was like, why would anybody need an expensive B-series motherboard? But actually, it provides lots of the features you'll find on the more pricey X670E and non-E chipsets at a lower price point. It's also got features like Wi-Fi included on this board as standard, and a really, really strong I/O and connectivity. Remember, of course, as well, AMD do let you overclock on the X and the B-series chipsets, so these aren't just expensive paperweights as you might often find with expensive B-series Intel chipsets. It's all very confusing. If you're looking for the easy recommendation though, out of all of these, comparing and contrasting them against each other, I selected this. Now this is the ASUS TUF Gaming B650M Plus, and it's one of the better value B650 boards in my opinion. If we take a quick swizz around this rather good looking motherboard, you'll see of course the AM5 socket, 4 RAM DIMMs for our 32 gigs of DDR5, and of course beyond with upgrades, Gen 5 PCI M.2 slot, and then the rear I/O is pretty strong as well. 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, 20 gigabit USB-C, no Wi-Fi on this board, but that's something we can easily add in, and they also do offer a Wi-Fi version. ASUS often do that, they have one with and one without. In order to install the processor, we just got to lift up the arm on the socket, and then you'll notice, of course, this has got pins on. The last generation AM4 socket we had for years didn't have any, so do be careful if it's your first time installing an LGA style CPU socket. Drop that bad boy in there, a little something like so, give it a bit of a wiggle, and then add the cover back down, pop the arm into place, and we are all good to go. The RAM is next. There's one, and there's the second and final slot with 2 left for future upgrades, so you can put 64 gigs in here, absolutely no problem. M.2 SSD is next, and I'm just going to use the top slot by taking off the built-in heatsink, adding in the drive, and putting the heatsink back into place. Remember to peel off the little protector on the thermal pad as well, to keep that M.2 drive nice and chilly. The CPU cooler is next, and it's the final bit really I'm going to install onto the motherboard before looking at the case, which is a brand new unit from Cooler Master, but we cannot get distracted. This is cooler time, not case time. This is the Hyper 212 Stealth RGB Black Edition. Installing this is super easy, by the way. Just got to take off these pre-installed brackets, remove the default backplate, and then add this thing into place. This is the backplate that comes with the cooler.
Much later.
That backplate's built in. Guys, we have a problem. So ASUS's backplate is built in. I'm obviously forgetting how AM5 works. Some of the coolers are backwards compatible, and the coolers that are backwards compatible use these black plastic brackets as part of their installation method, which this does not. So now I am confused. New cooler time, yeah. Let me go ahead and pick up a budget Cooler Master 240mm unit, as that should fit in the case A-OK and will provide a bit of better cooling for the processor. But definitely something to watch out for. Double check your cooler has AM5, because not all AM4 coolers will work, as I have evidently just learned. I've got one. This is the Cooler Master MasterLiquid P240 Flux. Maybe not quite as budget as I was originally had in mind, but it's going to work A-OK. And in fact, apart from popping on back the black plastic brackets, which we'll now need to use, we haven't got to deal with this until a little bit later. So the case is next up. This is Cooler Master's brand new CMP 320. And it's basically their CMP 520, which I liked, but I thought looked a bit bland because of the size and shrunk down. So it's basically perfect for what we need in this build. I haven't looked too closely at this case, but I like the 520, so I'm hoping that the 320 is going to be just as good, but as I say, a bit smaller. Oh, I honestly get static electricity shocks from every case. One day, the static shock is just going to overcome me and I'm going to get zapped to death. Oh. First impressions are really good. Build quality feels pretty good for a budget chassis. And the form factor's nice. It's not too big. That's the one massive problem. He says he struggles to remove the final thumb screw with a lot of PC cases, especially if it's one of your first builds or you want powerful hardware. No, you end up having these gargantuan case designs which literally take over an entire desk. And nobody really wants that. I'm sure maybe some of you do, but not everybody wants that. Right, so if we pop the case down flat, this is going to be the easiest way to install the motherboard. I should mention as well, all the standoffs for my build are in the right place already, as of course this is a micro ATX motherboard in a micro ATX case. Have I mentioned this is a small case? I don't think I have. I'm going to screw this in, 3 screws at the top, 3 along the middle, and a couple down the bottom. It's looking very compact, and I am slightly concerned about GPU clearance, but it'll all be okay, I'm sure. Fingers crossed. I'm happy with that, and the next stage is to pop in the cooler. And at this point, I might as well call it the cursed cooler, because it's cooler round 2. Now, the good news is this cooler definitely works with this CPU mounting configuration, and will probably just provide us better temperatures anyway. I'll link some good alternatives that cost a bit less money down in the description below. What I'm going to do is take these included AMD brackets and just slide them into the side of the cooler. Once that's done, you then pop a screw through these holes. So there's 2 holes per bracket, and you should feel it getting tighter, obviously, the further it goes in. If I can tell you one thing for certain, though, they are very small. Cooler Master, you could have included some slightly larger screws. That would have made everyone's lives a little bit easier. I'm then going to add on this AMD bracket to the side of the cooler before popping the fans on the cooler radiator out of the box. It's a lot easier now than doing it later when it's already in the case. Some solid progress has been made. That is actually looking very, very visually appealing. And that means I can move on to... Oh, no! Oh my goodness me.
What have you done?
Oh, that's the worst drop in history of GeekaWhat. Oh no. Oh, my phone, the graphics card. Oh no. That was impressive. How did that happen? Action replay. Move on to... Oh no. Oh my goodness. Gracious me. This is a hopefully still working example of the RTX 3070 from ASUS. It's their tough gaming one, and the box took a bit of damage, shall we say, when it fell off there. But all will be okay. All is good in the world. Now, inside of here is the tough gaming version specifically. One of my favorite cooler designs available on the 3070. Would you take a look at this? Oh, yes. Now, the first thing I do want to do is just check it fits. Oh, easy. Now, back in the day, I say back in the day, like a year and a half ago when this thing first dropped, nearly 2 years ago, this was classed as a very big graphics card. But the new 4080 seems to have, well, completely ruined that idea. This is perfect for 1440p high frame rate gaming. It's a great match with the Ryzen 5 7600X. And the ASUS Tough design generally, it's just really, really nice. You've got a back plate, you've got a tiny bit of RGB, but it's actually one of the better value 3070 coolers. Plus, by the looks of the new 40 series, the 4070, whenever Nvidia bring that out, is also likely to be very expensive, and they probably won't discontinue this. So don't necessarily hold out for a next-gen GPU at this tier, because one might not be coming for this price for quite a while. We're going to line up the graphics card over the slot, push the clip in, and we should be good to go. Oh, yes. Look at that. Now you might be worried, James, there's no airflow. Well, that's because it's just sagging all over the place. Once it's screwed in, there's going to be plenty of ventilation space on the bottom to make sure this thing stays nice and cool. I love how well proportioned this whole build looks, and I am going to just pop in as well another fan at the back to help with our airflow situation. I think I should screw the graphics card in and get all of these screws off the table and out the way. Oh my, we're still going wrong today. The final component then really to deal with is the power supply. Now Cooler Master sent out this. It's their new 750i. It's basically an intelligent power supply with a 10-year warranty, great 80+ gold certification, and the new fancy PCIe 5 power connector. Of course, this build doesn't use that connector. It uses standard 8 pins, but it's good to have for future-proofing and allows you to operate without any dongles on all the latest 40 series cards. Of course, AMD have also opted to not use this cable on their new GPU releases either. Inside the box, you'll of course find the power supply in a nice little Cooler Master bag. This bag feels particularly premium. Good work, Cooler Master. And the power supply, oh, that's quite a nice design. I'm not 100% sure about the gold, but you're not going to see it in our unit anyway because, of course, you've got no window. You'll also then find, presumably, what looks to be a bag of included cables, which inside contains your power adapter for your specific region, a good selection of long plastic and reusable Velcro cable ties, great touch, and then in here, you'll also then locate all of the other cables. So you've got the PCIe Gen 5 power connector. Now, typically, this could do up to 450, but this one is limited to 300, presumably because of the graphics cards that Cooler Master want to limit you to with this. Of course, it's not 1,000 watts, but I've not seen that before. There's also a motherboard power cable. We'll need one of those. SATA, we're going to need one of those for the RGB controller for the fans that are installed. You've got your digital USB connection for connecting up to your USB port to monitor power usage. A couple of PCI power harnesses. They're actually individual, which is a nice touch. And there is one more cable that I need. Not that one. This one and this one. Now, these are our two CPU 4+4 pin power connectors to power up the CPU power header up the top. This video won't be a full cables and wiring guide, but what I'm going to do is pop all these into the power supply, plug all those up to, of course, the respective places in the system, and then boot the whole thing up to take a look at performance. But first, just how good it all looks when it's all powered up in the only way we know how. With Flux in the bag, it's time to see just how well this system stacks up in the performance department, and you'll be glad to find out that I've tested a wide variety of titles to see where this thing excels and where it plainly doesn't. Everything from the new Spiderman Miles Morales to Warzone 2, Modern Warfare 2 and Fortnite. And why don't we start off with Fortnite, shall we? 1080p competitive settings yielded 234 frames per second on average, with strong 90 and 99th percentile results too, with a game that at 1080p competitive actually looked visually pretty good. Apex Legends was a similarly positive story, 177 frames per second on average in this instance, with 90 and 99th percentile results in the region of 166 and 150 frames per second respectively. To break that all-elusive 140 FPS in Apex was amazing to see, and the gameplay was butter smooth. Call of Duty's Warzone 2 was next up, 1440p high with DLSS enabled and set to quality. Of course, only DLSS 2.0 on these Ampere graphics cards, and I got 82 FPS on average. As always, all the frame rate data was tested with both MSI Afterburner's Reaver Tuner and Nvidia FrameView for good measure. The gameplay was smooth, and the new Warzone 2 title certainly held its own. Moving through into Modern Warfare 2 next up, I've been loving the campaign mode on this recently, and at 1440p high with DLSS once again enabled, 96 FPS was the number achieved. Gameplay was once again butter smooth, and the 90 and 99th percentile results were in the region of 90 and 79, providing a very consistent level of frame rate. Spider-Man Miles Morales was next up, the brand new Spider-Man title been out for less than a week, and here at high settings with DLSS 2.0 enabled once again, the frame rate of 105 FPS on average was superb. The game looked visually stunning and the frame rate ran very smoothly, making this system a fantastic all-rounder. As ever, you can find more detailed benchmarks on our dedicated benchmarking YouTube channel linked below. Thanks for watching though, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.